and welcome back to the podcast. No, wait, that's a...
Welcome back to the co-treat.
What am I supposed to do? I say hi when y'all say?
No, you just
Okay.
just sit back.
So this one's going to be a little weird. I'm Jonathan. I'm your occupational therapy person today.
And I'm Magnolia, your speech therapy person today, and we have a special guest.
Who is this mystery voice that we just heard?
So we have today, you want to say your name?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Rotter. I'm Magnolia's sister.
Gross. Yeah, so we pull out our personal connections for our first few guests. We had his mom and now my sister on here.
And my good friend.
Yes, and your good friend. I forgot.
I'm sorry. She was our first guest.
I'm so sorry. I forgot.
Wow.
So we're pulling out the personal and Ajax.
Oh,
is here.
and Ajax.
That's a great point.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
So we're pulling out all of our personal people first.
If you can't bring your friends and family onto a podcast, what are they good for? Really? You know? So
Truly.
Let's see. Why are you here? Wait, am I supposed to call you Elizabeth?
That's fine.
Do I have to call you Elizabeth these days?
Call me EG if you want to.
Okay, sorry. I knew her as as EG in high school.
Yeah.
We were in cross country together.
Yeah, we did.
It was fun.
That's very fun.
We grew up together.
Magnolia and I were siblings all our lives.
I love it. So EG, Elizabeth, oh gosh, I'm going to try. She's
Hey,
an adult. She's
EG.
a professional. She's a teacher.
I will be calling you EG
Okay, good.
because I don't.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Grace, also known as EG.
I never call her Elizabeth. Elizabeth. It feels weird. Okay, this is not the topic
So,
of this
It's fine.
podcast.
No, hey, it's just a conversation. So why are you here? What's happening? What are we doing?
I think we're here to talk about special education.
Yeah.
Special education.
Yeah.
And what makes you qualified to talk about special education?
Well, I am a special ed teacher. I teach kindergarten through second special ed. I have a bachelor's degree in K through 6 special ed. Then I also have a bachelor's degree in K through 6 elementary education and a bachelor's in early childhood special ed and early childhood. So I got the joy of bundling that all together during my bachelor's,
That's a lot.
which was hard, but it was just an extra 2 summers to get the early childhood add-on.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah. Awesome.
and now I have a master's in K through 6 special ed. Woo!
Recent
Yay!
grad.
Yay!
Whoop whoop.
She has completed the unit of our family. Now we all my mom, my dad, and both of us now all have masters.
Oh my gosh. What
So I'm proud of our little family.
Yeah, wow.
family?
Highly educated.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
My mom is the most highly educated in my family.
I can see that.
Yeah. None of us have reached her level.
She says,
I can see that.
She's just awesome.
She says, I can see that.
Well, I listened to her podcast and I became an instant fan.
She's the
I was like, I want to be her friend.
right.
Yeah.
She's the bomb.
She's so much
She's-
better.
Yeah, I know.
I'm being bullied on my own podcast.
Oh, okay, anyway.
It's fine. My feelings are only slightly hurt. It's fine. It's fine. No, but mom is the bomb.
She
You guys would have
I feel
many wonderful conversations.
Yes.
So you said you're working on, or you just finished your master's in
Yes.
what again?
K through 6 special ed.
Okay.
So kindergarten through 6th grade for those who don't speak the lingo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fun. Okay, so I think it would be useful because I was realizing leading up to having you on our little podcast to talk about special education, I was like, I've never talked to a special ed or SpED teacher about what actually is the lens of special education. So I don't guess I have a good, I know what they do based on having interactions with them, seeing, talking with them kind of generally. But as far as if someone were to be what specifically is special education's job, I really wouldn't have I wouldn't have a great answer.
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, we had to do it for speech and OT month,
Yeah.
so it was a really
what
big
would
deal.
be, we practice in our coursework. I mean, we do in OT. I don't know if they do in speech, but we have an elevator speech
Okay.
where it's if you're just given a snippet of if you're just given 30 seconds to describe what you do, go for it. What would yours be? If you're I'm a SpED teacher, this is what this
Wow.
means.
So I think my go-to that I say to people when they ask me is I'm a special ed teacher, so I teach students that have disabilities or special needs, and they need help and they need support in the classroom to be successful. So that's kind of like the wording I use, because sometimes people they don't know what special ed is, and I'm like, how do you not know? Because it's my whole life. But that's my go-to for sure, like the short version of it.
Yeah.
That was a good explanation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good and quick.
Yeah.
So what made you interested in going into special education as for a teacher?
So it really started out when I was pretty young. My mom was a speech therapist, and I was around a lot of students and a lot of kids with special needs. And so I originally wanted to be a physical therapist to be able to work with students with special needs.
Gosh, how cool. We would have been the trifecta.
Wow.
I ruined it.
And how interesting. That would have been cool.
So I always knew I wanted to work with individuals with special needs, but I thought it was going to be through physical therapy. And then I had a friend in school in the 5th grade. He had autism, and I was his peer helper. I was his peer buddy. And so that kind of started my desire to work. That's where it all began. And then in high school, I volunteered in the special ed classroom and really enjoyed it, and still had the mindset of being a physical therapist. So I went to the University of South Alabama to be a physical therapist. Then I started taking some classes, realized I did not like kinesiology or muscles or anything of that sort. I just liked kids. And I remember talking to my advisor, and I said those exact words, and she said, "Why don't you want to be a teacher?" And I was like, oh, it had never, ever dawned on me before to be a teacher until she said those words to me. So I was like, well, there's a lot of expectations for me. I have to go and be a doctor of physical therapy. I feel like I need to go do big things.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of worried about what people would think of being a teacher.
Sure.
And because, I feel like teachers don't get the respect they always deserve.
It's for the teachers.
But then someone told me, it was one of my favorite things, we need smart teachers. And instantly I was like, okay, I'm going to put my pride away and I'm going to do this because it's my passion. It's what I'm called to do. And since then, that's been my passion.
I love that.
Oh, and you worked with kids with special needs, or adults too, with special needs, in college as well, right?
I did. So I volunteered at a dance studio who offered dance classes for individuals with special needs all the way from ages 3 to 21. And we got to do classes. I got to know the students. And then some of the students were even students I was working with in the school placements I was at. So I really got to make some great connections with parents, with students, and just other professionals, like even OTs, PTs, speech. They were all there volunteering. And so I really got to learn a lot through that avenue of dance and working with them. Yeah.
That's really cool. It's neat to have, because EG also has a very long history of dancing. You were a dancer for many years. So it's cool to have your kind of passions collide in that such a it's such a cool way.
Yeah. And that's where my passion began with.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit really quick before we keep digging into SpED. Where is that passion of dance and special education merging right now in your life?
It became my passion, like I said, and I got with the dance studio where I grew up dancing and said, hey, how would you feel about a dance class for individuals with special needs? And they were all for it. So I now have started a class. It will start this August. I'm very excited at the end of the month.
Cool.
I have a few people signed up. We'll see how registration goes. But we're going to offer a dance class for individuals with special needs. And I had so many parents reach out to me thank you so much for doing this. I've looked for the longest time for something for my child to be involved in. So I'm very excited.
I think that's really cool. I'm very excited for you because as a person who works with kids with special needs, it's the community is a missing piece a lot of the time in a lot of our families' lives. They don't feel like they have a lot of community. They feel very isolated and alone. And so having opportunities where they can go out and make community with other people who have similar experiences with them, who might be able to understand what they're going through, is so cool. And I love that people are doing that kind of stuff.
So if you're listening to this podcast and you want to volunteer, hit me up.
Yeah, we can tag you in our Instagram post so people can find you.
It's so cool. That's really cool. Congrats.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Oh my gosh. She hasn't even done it yet. Take her down a notch. Take her down a notch. Anyway.
About it.
So we'll bring it back to special education now.
Okay. SpED. We talked about what is SpED. Okay, so where are we at?
What's your like day to day?
Yeah, day to day.
So I'm going to start out with a little bit more about what you asked about SPED. So there's kind of different levels of special education.
Okay.
So we have like resource special education, which is a resource teacher that pulls students. So like once a student has been qualified for special education services, depending on the IEP decision or depending on what that student needs to succeed, like I said, in education, they may be placed into different placements. And one of those placements can be with a resource teacher inside of a general ed classroom. So like a typical kindergarten, first grade classroom, something like that. So we have resource teachers who pull out students to receive their services, whether it's reading, math, behavior, whatever they may need. And then we have other teachers that are called self-contained teachers, and they work with students with more severe disabilities that need help functioning in like adaptive daily living skills, or they need help really in communicating. A lot of times is a big thing. Like a lot of students who are unable to communicate with their peers and teachers have a really hard time being in a general ed classroom. So a lot of that is just goes into making the decision of where they're placed at. So I work with students that need that extra help in reading, math, living, communication. They have more needs.
Yeah.
So for me, I am a self-contained special ed teacher, so my day looks a little different than some other special ed teachers.
Sure.
So for me, it's we come in every day, we try and set a routine because my kids, they thrive on routine. You will know if we get off routine one day, you'll hear us pretty much in the hallway because there's fear, there's a lot of problems when it comes to getting off routine. So we try to stick to our routine. We come in very excited. We're eating in the cafeteria. Y'all don't understand how big of a deal that is.
That's awesome.
It has gone great. We were very nervous. In the past, we have eaten in our classrooms because due to COVID, it was easier for one. And then once COVID was over, they were like, hey, this is really easy. We get to keep them in here. There's no like other distractions. There's no possibility of them wandering off. But when I came to work here, I was like, I would love to be in the cafeteria because, you know, inclusion, we can be around other students. They can learn how to function throughout the cafeteria, pick up their plate, go sit down, realize that we sit and eat. When the time's done, we clean up and we leave. It's a really big skill to learn. Like I said, I have kids with adaptive needs. So that was like a big deal for me that I wanted to do. So we started that. It's gone great. So go to the cafeteria, we come back, we do phonics, we do reading. I typically work in a small group. It's very hard to work in a whole group when you have a lot of students that have a lot of needs, a lot of hands-on needs. And I also have a para in my classroom. I have a para educator, and she...
What in the world is a para?
A parrot.
A parrot.
Not a parrot.
Who's Molly?
A para educator is someone who assists in instructional needs. So that can be for the teacher or that can be for the student. So they're there to just really support the classroom. They keep everything running. They keep everything together. For my classroom, it looks a lot like pulling students to work on some of their skills they need. They're able to provide special services with a special ed teacher there present and watching and being a part of it. And so I couldn't do it without them. They are the best thing ever.
Sure.
They help with the changing of students because sometimes students are still potty training. So it really helps when they're able to take them to the bathroom and help them get on that schedule and help them change pull-ups, whatever it may be. They're always there and ready to go. And that's why I appreciate them so much.
Very cool. If you're from a medical background, I think the kind of comparison would be like a CNA.
Yeah.
It would be that kind of a super important job that gets no credit ever. And
Agreed.
Literally is the kind of...
The only thing keeping things going, really.
Yes, really. Like if it wasn't for them, because us teachers, we have so much paperwork. There's so much to do. Like sometimes I don't have time to sweep the floors and they're always there ready to go and ready to do it for me. And I really appreciate it.
Wow.
So you do small groups.
Yeah, typically our teaching is in small groups. Sometimes it's one-to-one based on the child's needs. Pretty much all teaching is based off needs. So at the beginning of the year, we do a lot of data collection where we see where the student's at. And then we take that and we build from there pretty much, like what they're able to do. And then we try and further that. And that a lot of time is where their IEP goal comes from also.
Mm-hmm.
And so do small groups. We go to the cafeteria, eat lunch. We go to PE. They love PE. It's the favorite time of the day.
I think that's pretty unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all
Yeah.
kids love
Most
that.
kids are like,
Everybody.
PE, the bomb.
It's my favorite part of the day.
Yeah.
Then we have some recess time. We have snack time. And that's really our whole day. I work on IEP goals a lot at the end of the day. My kids love to paint. They love to do sensory things. We do that a lot at the end of the day. That's my typical day.
Awesome.
That sounds like a busy day.
It's very busy.
I
Yes.
think, like, teachers, I don't even know how they do it. Ugh. Their days, like, stress me out. Just look at the
Mhm.
schedule.
So your same group of kids stay with you all day.
They do.
Okay.
I do have some students that go into inclusion, which means they go into a general ed classroom, like kindergarten or first grade classroom, and they're with their age-appropriate peers. So they're in there learning with them. A lot of time, that's a lot of social learning for them,
Mhm.
where they're learning how to sit at a table, how to sit at a rug. Because sometimes in my classroom, they don't have that example because we're all learning how to do that at the same time.
Mhm.
So sometimes for them to go into that classroom is really helpful for them to see a good example of that. And
Okay.
they're in there for social or it might be academics. So there's a lot of moving parts. The scheduling is huge because I have to make sure they're going when kindergarten's going or first grade's going. I have to make sure I have a para to take them where they need to go. I need to make sure I have coverage so I'm not in there by myself if something was needed. It takes a lot of planning.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It really seems like the more I know teachers,
Mhm.
and my mom and my sister and you, and the more I talk to teachers, it's really like a game of logistics.
Yes.
Is really in my very brief
Mhm.
excursion into school system
Mhm.
therapy. It's a lot of logistical planning,
Yeah.
mumbo jumbo, just trying to get all the things you got to get done in a day and done in a day.
Yeah. So, like, what do they do if you can't be in the classroom? Does that ever happen?
So we're really a substitute would be the number one option. So we have certified substitutes who go through background checks and things like that who are trusted to be in the classroom when I'm not there. So substitute number one, which if you are a teacher, you know, those are very hard to find sometimes, especially in my classroom. Sometimes it's hard to find people that are comfortable with working with people with special needs. And to have that few that will come in there, it can be tough sometimes. So sometimes it looks like splitting a class if that's necessary. And I'm sure y'all know that really throws off their
Sure.
whole schedule. So that's like last case if we can. So really, substitute number one for sure.
Do you have to have specially trained
So
substitutes for a
you do
SpED
not.
classroom?
No.
Interesting.
But they prefer a certified personnel in there. So like they don't want me to leave the classroom and leave the paraprofessional in there by herself.
Sure.
They prefer for me to stay in there. And I know there's like some laws and things like that that they know, like my higher ups know that they're trying to look out for us and
Mhm.
make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
So if you had other children, if there are kids in the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
the expectation is that you will be in the classroom.
Yes.
But if everybody left, then you would go with them.
Yes.
Okay, the real question here, this is a little personal. When are you able to go to the bathroom?
I don't.
Okay. When do you eat?
I don't.
Okay.
So that's something my first year I really had to take a step back. You know, my mentor teacher had to be like, you have to take care of yourself 1st.
Mhm.
It's very important. So I do have a planning period, but I'm expected to eat, plan, use the restroom, and go take my students to PE, pick them up from PE. So in all, I have like 10 minutes sometimes to myself because I have 40 minutes to do all of that. And I try to eat, I try to go to the restroom. And if there's a time like I have to go to the restroom, one reason we moved to the end of the hallway, which, surprise, we moved. I didn't really say anything about that. We just moved classrooms. So
Yeah.
we moved because we could be near a restroom. So it'd be a little easier for our students and for us. So I can just like wave at the door. So I can run into the restroom. I'll be right back.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just have to schedule it in also.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
You gotta train that blood.
Yeah.
That is wild. So you talked about IEPs.
Mm-hmm.
We talked to Mom about IEPs.
Yeah.
Kind of got her perspective, which I thought was very interesting because she really, in pre-K, sounds like, doesn't have a whole lot of like constraints placed on her. Not constraints, that's not the word.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of
like guidelines and stuff.
Yeah.
Classroom.
Yeah, like they get very, as far as I understand, can get very stringent, like as people get older, because those kids have more specific needs and they have more academic targeted goals.
Mm-hmm.
But so what does that look like for you? What does your IEP season look like? What does the process look like?
Yeah. And explain IEP again. We need to
an IEP is an individualized education program or plan. It's made for students with disabilities. So the first step of the IEP process is referral. So if there's a teacher that sees a student that they think that they may need extra help or special services, they can refer. Then there's the parent referral where they can, hey, my student might need some help, or I think they have a disability, or they've been to the doctor and they have been diagnosed with a certain disability. They can refer their student. A lot of times we get students already with IEPs because they've had early intervention or they've been through pre-K with our special ed pre-K. So we know about them. We have their IEP on file already. So we don't often see a lot of referrals when it comes to our classroom because they're already in the system because they've had needs since they were born.
Yeah. Because specifically because your kids are in an inclusion classroom.
Yes.
So these are the kids that, and like you said, you're talking about adaptive.
Mm-hmm. They just have more needs.
So for people who don't know what adaptive needs are, it's basically daily living skills.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have a hard time functioning or they have extra challenges to functioning in daily life.
Whether it's following a schedule, using the restroom.
Right. So those are things that are often identified and like known about before they enter school.
Yes.
So there's intervention hopefully already in place.
Because by the time they come to me, there's already been the IEP meeting that they've discussed all their needs and they've realized that they need to be in the placement with my class.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So after the referral process comes eligibility. So they're tested to see if they do have a disability because they do have to have one of the 13 disabilities within the IDEA, which I know y'all talked about a little bit last time when you talked with your mom. So they do have to have a disability. They have to have that from a doctor or a testing center. They have to have documentation. Plus our school system psychometrist, which is someone who tests for developmental skills, disabilities.
Ajax going to town on the scratching post.
I think that's the word we were looking for last time was psychometrist. Like I think we were like talking about that.
Yeah, I think you said
I think we might have found that. I just remember we talked about it one point.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So the psychometrist.
I would like to do that. I'd like to be a psychometrist.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it looks fun.
It's totally right up your alley.
Yeah, it would be. Anyway, back to you.
For us, our psychometrist is like our special ed director. Like, so she comes in, she tests the students.
That's a good pairing, I think.
It is. It's a lot, though. We do have a separate teacher that comes in and helps too, some, but they come in, see where they're at developmentally to see if they do qualify for special ed services. And once that process is done, we step into creating the IEP. So that is where the parents, the special ed teacher, the general education teacher, OTs, PTs can be a part of the special ed team. Speech can be a part of the special ed team. Especially speech is a really big part because we have speech therapists within the school system and they get to see our students. So we all come together, really make a plan that works best for the student. Typically, you have to have reading. You have to have a math goal. If the student needs an adaptive skill, we'll add that goal. And these goals are just things to help them succeed and be successful. I know I've said that a lot, but that's really just the whole goal in my perspective, for sure. And it may be behavior goals. It may be a speech goal. It's whatever they need. We go in and we work together. Typically, the special ed teacher will sit down and write we'll write the IEP, a draft version, and be like, this is what I'm working on. What do you think? And everybody puts their input in. They get teacher input. They get parent input within writing the whole plan. It can take a while to write it if you want to write a very good IEP. Which I try to do, but there are time constraints. We have 30 to 60 days with some things we have 90, which we can take some more time on, but there are time constraints that we have to get done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So who is initially writing the goals? Is it special ed teacher?
Special ed teacher, yes.
Okay, cool.
So I can do it based off what the parent has said, based off data that has been collected. If I know the students, it's really easy. I've been with them, I've done the data collection. I'm like, this is where they're at. This is what we need to work towards.
Mm-hmm.
And I typically try to do it. I know y'all talk a lot about strengths-based. I try to do that a lot instead of being like, they can't do this, so we're going to try and do this over here. I try to be more like, oh, well, they know how to their letters and sounds. Maybe we can start blending those letters and sounds and build from that. Or they know how to add. Let's see if we can start figuring out how to subtract, which that's a big goal for some of these students, but it's something that we want to work towards because students, especially students with disabilities, they deserve a free and appropriate education, which is the law. They deserve a high quality education. So it's important to make sure they're getting what they need and having those high expectations for students. So
I love that.
That was a great explanation.
Thank you. I hope it was.
I'll give you that one.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some examples of some of the adaptive goals that y'all might have, whether it's communication or just basic functioning?
A lot of the goals we really want to work on as teachers are those following routines and tasks and set schedules, because that's such a big thing in school. Is you need to come in, you need to be able to unpack your backpack, and you need to be able to put your backpack in your locker, go sit at your seat. And that's very high demand for some of our students that we work with. So in order to help them be successful within the education environment, it's important for us to help them get that. And then a lot of times we'll see toileting, which is, I work on that no matter if they have a goal or not. We're going to learn how to use the restroom. We are going to potty train because parents, they want that. They're oftentimes trying so hard at home. So why would I not try at school also? So I typically don't write goals for that unless it's a huge need that I see, or they're starting to inch towards it and we really need to focus on it. I just do it anyway most of the time. So I don't always write goals like that. But the schedule one is a big one, and it may be changing themselves, once they've been, if they have diapers or they have clothes that they need to change. Some students need to help scheduling that. First we pull our arm through, first we do this, then we do that, another kind of schedule or procedure. Those are the big ones we see in the education environment for sure.
So from speech now, what about communication goals? So
communication goals, a lot of times I don't write them. The speech therapist writes them. We collaborate together. I'm like, this works best in my classroom. I see that they really need to work on this. And she'll be like, okay, well, I see this whenever I pull them for speech. Let's see what we can do. So sometimes they might have multiple. They might have a language and a communication goal, two separate ones. And I see that a lot with my students that need that extra help because communication is so important that we want to give them what they need.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's wants and needs, being able to communicate that, whether it's with their devices, whether it's with, a lot of times it is with the devices, whether it's with signs. We use a lot of sign language. Because that's big for me. If you're sitting there and you need your chips open for snack time, I'm not going to help you. You're going to have to come and you're going to have to say, help, please, because I want you to learn how to do that because that's an important skill. So that's the one we see a lot. And then we have some students with articulation, and they need help with that.
But more focused on communication.
Yeah, communication. Or interacting with peers is a big one, having conversation. I can't think of a specific goal off the top of my head, but just communicating with others around them, stuff like that.
Cool.
Very
Are you satisfied with that?
I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied right now. For now.
Do you work with the kiddos who have like mobility needs?
Yes.
Like
So,
or
my first year teaching, I had 2 students in wheelchairs, and that was interesting to navigate. I had never thought about, oh, well, we need to make sure we have a hand on her and a hand on her, and we also have to walk down the hallway. We have to do this, and she has to be able to get around the chairs. We have to set up the environment that works for her. I never thought about that before, and so that was a huge learning curve. So I took that with me. This year I have another student with a wheelchair, so I have to ensure that her para is able to push her around the room without running into a chair or to a table or into toys. So I have to make sure there's enough space, and I have to plan that as well. So,
do you get any sort of guidance from the PT or OT people? Are they helpful in that regard?
yes. So to backtrack a little bit, my first year of teaching, I taught pre-K special ed. So I had an inclusion classroom with students with special needs and students without special needs. And when I taught that, we had push-in services. So the PT, the OT, and the speech would come into the classroom, and they would sit and work with them where they were. There were oftentimes like a student that I had in a wheelchair. She needed to be pulled out so there could be more focused on like motor and help her with what she needed. But most of the time they came into the classroom and were like, what do you need from us? How can we help you? And I appreciated it so much as a first year teacher, because I was overwhelmed. Like I said, I had 2 students in wheelchairs and no experience. And so they really helped me with like, you can do this, you can do this. This is how you need to lift them out of the chair. Like things like that. They taught me all kinds of things. And so they did push in, which was beneficial, I think. And it helped me and the student grow. And now in the kindergarten through 2nd range, we have pull out, which they still do consultative. Like they'll ask me what their needs are, and they'll tell me what they think they need. And we kind of work together there for a little bit, but there's not much time for that. I mean, like if we're sitting and have a conversation, my room is in uproar because I'm not managing them. So it's kind of hard to find that time to meet with them. So it's important to set that aside, especially at the beginning of the year, have that initial conversation so we can kind of build from there. But they do a lot of pull out, and they are helpful with a lot of stuff. And sometimes my OTs will come in, like if they see we're doing a fun craft, like one day we were doing stickers on their names. They're like, oh, that's a great goal that like we need to sit there and work on too. So I'll just come in and help you. So sometimes they'll push in and do stuff like that, but most of the time it is pull out.
That's cool. I know there's a big push in the world of OT there are many school-based OTs who are like, we need to do as much pushing as we possibly can. But
I love it.
The whole point is having them be as successful as they can be in their environment.
And typically it's hard for the OTs and PTs for some of my students to take the students out of the classroom where they feel safe. And kind of take them to a new room where they've never been, which by the end of the year, it's great. They're fine if they enjoy it.
Transitions are hard.
But transition...
We say that all the time.
It is.
It can be very hard on the students, and sometimes they might not get any work done because it's so hard on them. So I see that as a benefit for push-in, for sure.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I love that.
So we definitely talked about like working with specialties, for sure.
So who is who tends to be the case manager for the IEP? Is that you?
That's
Are
me.
you the case manager for the kids that you have in your classroom? So you're the head honcho.
I am.
You're the director as well.
Yes.
Okay. Sounds...
It can be daunting sometimes because as a special ed teachers, you kind of have laws.
Yeah.
And you've seen people go through due processes. Like you learn about all that in school of like how you should do things and why we do them, because at one point a student wasn't getting what they needed and a parent stepped up. And I'm glad they did that. But it can be scary because there's always that chance of like, you might mess up.
Yeah.
But I just had to tell myself, like, you can only do the best you can do. And so I just try my best. Like I went and got my master's, which was really focused on those laws. And it was very helpful to learn more about them, to ensure like, oh, I might need to change that in my classroom because that might not be what I should be doing. Maybe I need to try this instead to make that less restrictive or something like that.
What are some ways that you like adapt things in your classroom to fit your students better?
So this is off the top of my head because I've been working with a parent this week. I have a student that if he does anything pen to paper, I can get nothing from him. And he will throw the pencil. He doesn't want to do pencil paperwork. He'll throw himself in the floor upset because you're asking him to do this task. But if I have manipulatives, like manipulatives are something you can hold in your hand and use to learn, is pretty much what we would call them. So whether it's flashcards, sometimes that works with him. If I sit there and I'm like, which is number 1? He'll show me number 1 every time. If I'm like, show me the square, every time he gets it right. And so just like to adapt that to work for him, to be able to show me what he knows instead of being like, no, you have to write it on the paper for me to know what you know. Like to get to realize he knows all his letters, all his shapes, all his numbers. He knows how to add. He can't write it on a piece of paper. But if you give him manipulatives, he can answer your questions. And he might not do it verbally because it's hit or miss sometimes. Sometimes he'll answer verbally, sometimes he won't, but he can always show me every time. Mm-hmm. So to be able to adapt that. So with counting, I let him line numbers 1 through 100. He was able to get to 30 the first time. That was great. Then we got a little confused. The next 9 weeks, we were able to get to 50. Wow. And the next 9 weeks, we were able to get to 70. We capped out at 70, which I was ecstatic. I was so happy about it.
70.
But if I asked him to sit there with the report card and say, count to 100, I would have gotten nowhere.
Sure.
So just stuff like that, knowing my students and how they learn and meeting them like at that, and then taking data and doing it that way changes everything for sure.
Yeah. That's a great example because I was still kind of like, okay, where are you going with this at first? And then I was like, okay, I get it now.
Because we get report cards every 9 weeks. We have to assess our students. If they're on a general ed curriculum, they have to take the same report card that another student in the kindergarten classroom has. So I'm held to a standard where I have to teach them those things, but I have to just make sure that it's in the way, accessible to them.
I think that's really cool. It reminds me of a kiddo that I have that I work with who has no verbal language, very limited verbal language, but he is super communicative in his body language and in the sounds he does make.
Yeah.
He's very expressive, and he's a friend who I have come to learn knows every single one of his letters, and like he knows them and tries to make them. Like he tries to draw them because he really appreciates letters. But it just takes that kind of moment to change things around. Because again, like he's not a friend that I could show him, like flashcards and be like, let's draw this thing. It's like we have to switch it around and do things a little bit differently. And yeah, it's really cool. Just kind of making it accommodating the way that his brain works.
And that's one thing in my classroom is we have students like that, because in the gen ed classroom, it's hard to do that. When you have 20 kids in there, it's really hard to give that student what they need. So like a lot of times being in that classroom, like with me, can help them get access to what they need.
Yeah.
It's very strengths-based, too. I love that. Because you're literally talking about what they're good at.
Yeah.
And using those strengths
to
help show that, like, they do know. They do have the knowledge.
Yes.
So that's
because
really cool.
Sometimes special education can have such a negative view. Like, parents will be like, I don't want my kid in special education. But when I get to show them, like, but if they come here, I can do this with them. And they can show you everything they know.
Yeah.
Like, but if you were in a different environment, that might not be the case.
Yeah.
So I was like, we can help him, and we can learn what he knows, and it can change the perspective of parents a lot of times. It changes my perspective.
Sure.
Right. I think people do think, I mean, just inherently that like special education is less education. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's just what people
I agree.
think of. And you were even mentioning it earlier, like some kids ask, why am I in special education compared to friends and stuff. So it's really neat that it's the same level of education. Like you're trying to meet the same goals, but you're just helping adapt it to our friends.
Definitely.
So that's really cool.
What do you say to the people who because there's a tricky conversation that happens within like within determining where these kids that have these profound needs go, right? Because there's a lot of evidence that supports inclusion into general classrooms and like getting them as active as they can be around other same age peers, like you were talking about earlier for a lot of the social emotional development, those skills, which we've talked about a lot, being they are learned in a social environment. That is why they are called social emotional skills, because they learn them from other people and interacting with other people. So it makes sense that a lot of those things would be very beneficial for these kids to be in around same age peers as much as possible. But then also, which you were just describing, how it's like that's not an environment that is suitable for them. It is not an environment for some of these kids that they will thrive and be successful, because it's not made for them. So where's the balance? How do you go about walking that line of, I want you to have access to people, to your peers, but then also I want you to like not be in crisis mode every time you enter the school building.
So there's a lot of different perspectives on this. So I can give you my perspective.
Okay.
I will not say it's the right perspective.
Sure.
But after doing a lot of research, which I just did my research paper on this topic, so I'm full of knowledge.
Yeah.
A master of knowledge, one might say.
Yes. So I got a little excited when you were talking. I was like, okay, I'm ready. So I think the most important thing to look at is individualized. Like that's the first word in the IEP is individualized. So what looks right for one student is not going to look right for the next student. Even if they have the same diagnosis, even if they have the same color hair, like nothing needs to be the same.
Sure.
So I think that's the number one thing to take into account, because if it just doesn't work for them, it doesn't. If it does, great. But you have to look at things like the least restrictive environment, which is one of those things a lot of teachers don't take into account when they have to work with students with special needs, whether they're general ed or special ed. They just put them where they think is best. They don't go through and look at the laws and look at the research. They say, well, their behavior's a lot, so we need to put them over here so they don't disrupt other students. Sometimes that happens, but you have to look at what's best for them, like I said, but also you have to look at the least restrictive environment. And we have different, so that would be there's not like a definition I could tell you off the top of my head, but it's placing them in general education as much as you possibly can, and giving them access to the general ed curriculum. That is the least restrictive. So the closest you can get to that is the least restrictive. So the farther you get away from that is more restrictive, if that makes sense. So that placement would look like being in a general ed classroom. And then the most restrictive would be being in a classroom and never leaving that classroom. So we really want to find somewhere in the middle that works for the students. And you have to take into account the other students in the classroom. You have to take account in your student, and I kind of got lost in all that, but really when it comes down, like what benefits them, and you want them to get what they need. And that is a fine line, and I don't really know the exact answer of how to do that, but it's really
okay.
I'm sure like you have to take in consideration like safety of everyone involved, the strain that is already on general ed teachers. I mean, we do have to take that into consideration. Like being a teacher is hard no matter what. A lot of general ed teachers have like 40 students in their classrooms. Like,
so that's a big thing, and you have to take into account those teachers, and you have to be respectful, and you have to collaborate with them the best you can. And sometimes teachers are accepting to students and they want them in their classroom. But I've been in situations where there's teachers that will not want to accept students with special needs. And that's a hard topic, and you don't always want to bring that up, but that is real and it happens.
Yeah.
Whether it might be their own personal preference or prejudice, or it might be something that they're uncomfortable with. And a lot of it is they don't have the training.
Yeah.
I, as a special ed teacher, don't have all the training I need sometimes to address some of these things that we see in the classroom, because a lot of times you have a student that has these behaviors, but they have a regular IQ. They have, they are excelling in academics. So you want them in that general ed classroom, but their behaviors are so explosive and so disruptive that the students are in danger. The teacher is in danger. So where do you put them?
Yeah.
Like where do they go? And that's really what we've encountered some is you want them to have access to that general education classroom, but you want them to be safe. You want the other students to be safe. So you have to plan and decide where they need to be.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite things is special education is flowing. It's not permanent. So every year you have to meet and you have to rearrange, or anytime a parent or a teacher can call an IEP meeting and make a change. So it's never just like set permanent. Like there's always a possibility. Like, of course, they want you to try it and see how it works for the student. But if you're like, hey, this isn't working, we need to change this, you can do that.
That's really cool. I love that you've got that flexibility to, you know, make in real time, in real time. I know it's still a process.
Yeah.
But
in real time with a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
Like changes and things that.
And a lot of parents don't realize that either.
Yeah.
Unless the teacher tells them.
So so take this opportunity to tell parents, because parents have no clue what their rights are a lot of the time, because it's not something that there's no class that parents, that just because you have a kid, you like sign up for this class and like this tells you all your rights as a parent. And like you said, unless your teacher tells you, a lot of times people don't have a clue.
Yeah.
So like, are there things that you wish your parents knew, rights that they have, procedures, whatever it is, that you wish that they knew from the jump?
Well, the special ed teacher or whoever's running the meeting should present a parent with rights, their special ed rights, at every meeting, or ask them if they want a copy of it. And if it's not at every meeting, it should at least be once a year. And I'm not sure what the exact law is, but like if your teacher is not doing that, ask for those. Ask for those rights. Read through it. It is 30 pages or so, but it's important that you know those things.
Yeah.
So take the time to sit down and read it, but also realize your teacher is trying their best. So if you realize there is somewhere where they're lacking or they might be messing up, talk to them. Say, hey, like I realized that so-and-so is not happening, or I wish so-and-so looked like this instead. And see if they're open to changing it, because they might not realize. Because there are times where I have 9 students and I have to make sure they all have their paperwork. They all have everything they need. I have to teach. I have to ensure they go to the bathroom every so often. I have to ensure we're going to lunch on time, PE on time. Like there's sometimes I just forget something, and it might not be something as big as a law in your special ed rights, or it might be something as small as I forgot to wipe the chocolate off of your child's face after they had their brownie at snack time. Just talk to them, talk to the parent, but also realize that teacher probably cares so much about your student, but there's a lot going on. And you have that one student at home, imagine that times 8.
Yeah.
And just give some grace sometimes, because it's hard to be a teacher every once in a while. But also like advocate for your kid at the same time. Like make sure they are getting those special ed like services that they have the right to have access to. And that means being an active parent, like be involved. How are they doing? How are they progressing? Read the progress reports, read the take-home folders. We take the time at the end of every day to write in the take-home folders.
Yeah.
To tell you how they're doing. So if you come to me 3 weeks later and say, I had no idea, I'm going to say, look in the folder.
Yeah.
Look in the folder. And that'll change a lot.
How about like in IEP meetings? Are there like any rules and stuff of like people that parents can bring with them?
Yes, so parents are able to bring anyone they want with them, really. Okay. They need to let the IEP person who's writing it or the teacher know so they can ensure they have all the correct paperwork, all the correct things set in place for that person. But you can bring advocates, you can bring your lawyer, which that's kind of scary. I wouldn't do that the first time. But I mean, you can. You can bring other professionals that know a lot about your kid. Yeah. If you want their input to be a part of the IEP, you can bring them.
Okay. That's cool. I think that'd be really interesting. I've never been called into an IEP meeting, but like, what an interesting prospect as someone who works with these kids before they go to school, oftentimes. Yeah. And a lot of our kids don't receive early intervention services, even though that is available to most of them, if not all of them. Not all of it's not going to be available to all of them, but it would be available to a lot of them. And they don't have by the time that they start school, the professional who knows the most about them sometimes is me. Yeah. And or their speech person or their IT person, whoever it is that works with them on a regular basis.
Yeah. I was thinking for example, I saw a patient today and the mom, he's in the stander and the mom was like, it's just not upright. Like she was like, I don't know. This isn't right. She didn't really know how to explain his needs for that. Well, neither did I. So I went and found his typical PT. He's like, please teach me. Yeah. Please fix this. So for example, that would be a really good person to go to these meetings to explain hey, this is what we do for his mobility, all of those things.
And I'm sure a teacher, the more they can know about a kid, the better.
Yeah. That's interesting. I wonder if people will know that. I don't know. I just never.
You want to go to an IEP meeting now, don't you?
But I mean, sometimes I think that'd be really great.
Well, Mom went to one time. Yeah. We remember talking about that for one of her patients because this school, and this was a bad scenario, worst case scenario, but the school was saying that he could only be there for a few hours of the day.
And that is totally against least restricted.
And they were this is real restricted. He can only come for 2 hours a day. That's it. And the grandma was like, that doesn't feel right. So she asked our mom or his speech therapist to come help advocate.
Yeah. And while there are loving special ed teachers out there like me, there are some people
like me.
Because I want to say I love my kids. There are some people. There are some people that don't know the new laws and the new ways of things, and if you disagree with something, say it. Yeah. And you might end up having to come down to a compromise, but I mean, you said something, and
I think that's really cool. I'm a fan.
But don't be intimidating and scary, because us teachers, we get scared too.
So you're just saying be nice.
Be nice.
Mutual respect.
Yes.
Mutual respect. I think that's important.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. I have a tendency, sometimes I get a little bit riled up.
He always gets riled up.
I do. Listen, I'm a passionate person. I have passions and they just explode.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have kiddos come in and their parents are talking to me about things that are happening at school. And I'm like, man, let's call a meeting with the school.
Yeah.
This is not okay. This is not okay. Your kid should not be struggling with this thing.
Yeah.
Because somebody should be in there helping. But then other times I also feel really bad because because I know a bunch of teachers and people who work in schools, and they're just doing the best that they can. So it's
it's a fine line.
Yeah, what do you do? What's the solution?
I think having civil conversation is a good start.
And maybe student caps. Maybe that would be nice.
Student hats.
Student caps.
Caps?
Just joking.
Caps. You can only have this many students.
Okay, that is a great view.
I think that might be helpful. Some places have that.
Yeah.
Some states have that.
I worked in a daycare for a while. I worked in daycare, and, they have the student-to-teacher ratios. I could only have 6 kids in the classroom, and if I had more than that, there had to be another person in there, or we were going against DHR. We need that. That would be great.
That would be great.
I do. Okay, so I do think that exists in Alabama, but I don't think it's as stringent as it is in other places.
Maybe not in the classroom at least.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, because like, for instance, mom in pre-K, I think the max they can not go over 10 students per teacher, and they have, you know, a lead teacher and an auxiliary teacher in the classroom at all times. So they have a max.
A lot of that starts at the top too, like somebody stepping up and saying, "No, this is
wrong.
The cutoff line. Like this is where we're gonna be."
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for like when we get more students, we typically get another paraeducator hired. That can be hard to hire people, but I do appreciate like oftentimes if our numbers get up, there's another person hired.
Especially like when you have kiddos with so many like accommodations.
Yeah.
Because like I remember you talking about one student who was blind, right? And I mean that was like I could imagine needing a lot of assistance.
Yeah.
As well. And like feeding patients as well. Or I say like, patients, you have students, but my feeding patients.
So like I do have a student, she is blind and she is in a wheelchair and she has a lot of medical needs, and she does have a 1-to-1 para, which is an option for students that have those extensive needs.
Okay.
But oftentimes that's like, it's restrictive. So you want to give it to the students who need it, because if you have a 1-to-1 para with a student, they can sometimes rely on them and come to them instead of making their own way and building their own learning. So like, but this student needs one. Like there's no doubt about it. Like they need help. And there are some students, that need help. But on that borderline conversation, you want to try without a para, in my opinion, because it can be pretty restrictive.
Yeah.
And like I meant to say earlier too, is if you have a student that isn't getting access to that general ed curriculum, there has to be a reason why in that IEP. You have to say, because of this, they are needing specialized instruction away from the general ed curriculum. So there are like steps set in place to be able to go through and realize where they need to be and why they need to be there, because you have to be able to fill out the paperwork to explain why, and you have to tell why. So that's also very important.
So what is your take on, there are some schools that exist that are specialized schools. Specifically what I'm thinking of is like the schools for like the deaf and the blind.
Yeah.
And to hear people, I mean, not only experience with it is literally what I see on social media.
Yeah.
And oftentimes what I see is people within the deaf and blind community like loving it. And they're like, this is the best, because they're around people that understand their experience. They are with their people. And it's like, I don't have to advocate for my basic needs because everybody gets it. So what is do you have a thought on kind of that versus this kind of idea that we've been talking about having people included within just the general education system?
So I was able to work in a bigger city my first year of teaching. So I was in a system that had a school for the deaf and blind. They had a school for...
The system itself did?
Yeah. It was awesome.
That is...
So I had a student that actually, she applied and she got accepted into the school. So we went through that like application process while she was in pre-K, so she'd be able to go in kindergarten.
Ooh.
And it was very exciting because she had, she was one of the students in the wheelchair. So she had extensive needs on top of her visual impairment. Yeah. And so it was going to be so beneficial for her because, but she had the ability to do a lot of things. She just needed that support. And I don't think I could give it to her. And I don't think wherever she was going to go in kindergarten could have given that to her, but they had the resources at the school for deaf and blind. So I was like over the moon that she was going to get together.
Yeah.
And then, so I think when it's a situation like that where they need that access to the supports and to the services and we can't provide it, then go for it. Like, that's great.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
But unfortunately, we don't really have that.
No, in our rural areas. And I mean, and the community is so important. Like, the deaf community is such a big community. So, like, I think it would be important for, like, emotional development.
Well, it just makes me think about like if that is such a successful environment and experience for those people, then would does that leave room open for a conversation for like an autistic school?
So I also,
I think there has been. Yeah,
there was also a school within the system, and it wasn't that you did have to have a diagnosis of autism, but it wasn't because you had autism you were in the school. It was called Abel's, and you had to have a behavior plan set in place, and you had to have had that behavior plan not be successful within the environment you were in.
Yeah.
And you had to have data showing it and the diagnosis of autism. And this was a school for people that were equipped to assess and to help these behaviors and help with students with autism. And they had that. And I think it was pretty successful from what I've heard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a possibility, I guess.
Well, that's interesting because now my brain just thinks.
I know. It's an endless.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, I mean, that sounds like it's a last resort type thing where it's like you have to have tried this other thing and failed.
Yeah.
And then not you failed, but the system failed.
Yeah.
That
to realize you needed those more support.
Right. You were not successul in this situation due to whatever reason. And then you go to this other school. But then, like, what if, like, is there room for us? Would it even make sense? I don't know. Genuinely, this is just coming to me for there to be like this is the first point of contact where it's like, oh, you have a diagnosis of autism. So like, let's go to this school where we'll be around autistic peers. And
one thing we have to take into consideration though, there's still such a negative stigma with autism though. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So like, we're like,
Tell me about it.
like, you know, like,
I know about
like,
the stigma, but like, what are you talking about?
I'm just thinking like deaf and blind, like deaf has like claimed their community, like capital D deaf community.
Yeah.
Versus autism is like, it's becoming still not a bad word to some people.
Like it's lesser almost.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you have autism, so you can't participate.
Yeah. It's always what you can.
Even, you know what I mean? It's,
yeah.
I think people see it less as a medical diagnosis. And this is just me speaking off my head now. Like I think people see it less as a medical diagnosis and more of a behavior diagnosis. Like as she's talking about. So because they don't fit the societal norms, then we're going to make them try it. And then when it doesn't work, we're going to move them away.
Well, on the other hand of that, I think that it's also important to give them a chance.
Yeah. I mean, it is, definitely.
Yeah. Like, to just see, like, what can you do?
But it would be really neat to see, like, an autistic community.
Oh, I agree. That would be great.
Like, step up and say, like, okay, this is an autistic school. And you could even have levels as you do, as you even do in a regular school. You have standard diploma, advanced diplomas. You have people who take AP classes. You could offer the same type thing, but in a, like, autistic community.
Yeah.
Based thing.
It would be a delicate.
Yeah. That's what my brain is thinking about because, like, oftentimes, as far as I understand, in these deaf and blind schools, they are run by people who are deaf and blind. They are run by people who understand what it is like to live life with this experience. And so, like, that's what I'm thinking of. It's like having, like, autistic people be the ones who...
Yeah.
They're the ones who run the school.
I think that'd be super cool.
I think it depends on your perspective of it. If you're thinking of the perspective of, oh, they're different and we need to get them out of the way, like, oh, they're disruptive, we need to, I don't want to say lock them in a room, but like, that's what some people have, that perspective of we need to put them over here because they're different. I think as long as you're not having that perspective of having a separate school of saying you're different, so you have to go here, and more of a accepting perspective of like, oh, you have this awesome exceptionality and you can use that to grow and to do great things.
I love that.
I
mean, like, I'm picturing, like...
This must be a teacher thing.
I'm picturing just, like a school where, like, it's okay to talk about your special interests for hours.
Yes, I agree.
Eye contact does not have to be enforced.
It's just really, it's about the perspective.
Like, a place for them to shine without the... They can still practice social skills, but without the constraints of, like, mainstream school. Would be kind of neat. Yeah. It'd be very inclusive.
It would.
Yeah.
And I think that's one reason I don't like the idea of you have to go over here if you're different, because that's very exclusive, like, you know? And, like, that's one reason I'm all for my students going in the general ed classroom, no matter how hard it can be, is, like, I want them to feel like they are a part of something. And while they could find that in a school for autism, you know, like, they could have that community.
it's interesting. And I mean, I know I've used this example before, but it's just it's not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I just imagine it's not the same thing at all. But I do understand the concept of like being a part of a minority group as a gay person in the South, where it's like you don't feel included in these places because they're not made for you. The people aren't like you. You don't feel comfortable to talk about all of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So like on that, that part makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. To
like have that sense of community, not because, hey, you tried to be over here and like you messed up and like we gotta kick you out.
Yeah.
But because this is a group of people who understand you because they are like you and they may be better able to support you because they are like you.
But you wouldn't like it if they didn't give you a choice. You know, like if it's like you have to.
For sure.
It's like, no.
For sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just interesting.
It is interesting because at the same time, I think the bigger goal would be that all general schools, mainstream schools, are all more accepting and more inclusive. Right. That would be the ultimate goal.
And it comes with having more training. Like that's a lot of what I realized when I was doing my research was gen ed teachers are not equipped to work with students with behaviors or with special needs. So they just throw in the towel and it's like, oh, and they get scared. And so, and it's a fallback of, well, they need to go over here and so like if we had more training and we had more student or even inclusion teachers is something we have heavily discussed. Somebody who is made to take those students out of a different environment and take them into a new environment, push in, help give those services within that general ed environment. I think that would be the most successful. But again, that's more funding. That's more another perspective that someone would have to take in the higher up. Yeah. Realizing that's something that would need to be done is, and I think it would just change so much.
Yeah. But it also, all of this too, I think can be influenced by like therapy people too, to kind of like add us. Like it's important that like speech, OT, like we're advocating for our patients and that we're willing to be flexible because I mean, I know people, therapists can be like tough on like, no, I have to pull my kid out and go sit in my little closet and do their therapy. Like we would have to learn also like how to be more inclusive to provide like push-in services or to help our kid thrive in the general ed if we were to help that out.
Y'all have some more liberties, if I'm correct, to have more access to like their outside life. Like I get to see them in school and I'm kind of stuck there and sometimes it's unprofessional. And it can be like unconfidential to like reach out outside of the school life and be like, hey, there's this dance class I'm doing over here. If you'd like to join this community, sometimes y'all might, I don't know if y'all have a better avenue for stuff like that or not.
We do as outpatient therapy people. Yeah. But
I think, going into the schools, I mean, they're still very limited.
Different roles.
Yeah. I was just kind of thinking more of like, it's also on us to be more inclusive and like to help the special ed teachers
and I know
to help their kids be more inclusive.
We need to have a school-based, we need to have some school-based clinicians, some therapy staff come and talk to us because don't know as much about it, but I know at least in Alabama, like part of the struggle for OT is there's just not enough. There's not enough OT people. Imagine, okay, I'll give you a statistic. There are approximately 1,700 OT clinicians in the state of Alabama. That is nowhere even close to the number of schools, the number of school systems. Does not like if every single OT person worked in schools in Alabama, it may still not be enough to support the whole state.
I know a lot of OTs see multiple schools in multiple counties.
They are bouncing around all over the place. Yeah. And so they're just trying to like pop in and do as much as they are able to do.
Or required to do it in the IEP because they need to reach their minutes and weekly times. I am one of those teachers that will keep up.
Okay then.
Snap. Pop off, girl. Pop off. Because it's true. It's true. Well, and it is legally required.
And I'm their case manager, so it's on me if it doesn't get done.
I appreciate you.
So
I appreciate you. I was trying to be nice about it.
She's like, I'm calling all of them to come here.
Hey, the ones that come and see my children, they're great. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm not.
But it is very much a thing, at least in the state of Alabama, that people are like, it was written in their IEP that they need 60 minutes a month, so I have to get in and do 30 minutes this week and 30 minutes the next. And it's like, you're just trying to do the most that you can because of the legal requirements. And like, you can go to jail. It's a crime if you don't.
Yeah.
It's a federally mandated law.
And that can make it hard because, again, that's another perspective of like, I've just got to get the time in.
Yeah.
Not I've got to help them.
Yeah.
I've got to get.
So then maybe we just need to be advocating for each other.
Yeah.
The therapy people need to be like, hey, support our teachers because they're working real hard. And then our teachers need to be like, hey, support our therapy people because my kids need more help.
We should literally be like teaming up. I mean,
anytime my parents ask, like a lot of times they think that they need to stop outpatient PT and OT and speech when they start school, but in school it's really school based, like what can help them be successful in the school environment versus not everything else. So I'm like, please take them to OT, PT, speech, everything outside of school that you can, because it can only help them. And a lot of parents don't realize that.
We preach that too.
We do. We have many conversations about it because it's not the same thing. And we have different avenues and perspectives. So we really just need to be best friends.
We do.
Yes,
teachers
I agree.
And therapy staff are really a match made in heaven.
So to tie us all up here a little bit, what are some of your like favorite resources and favorite items to end us off here?
So I love anything that you can adapt, of course, like we said. I love anything that I can change around. It doesn't have to be paper and pencil. It can be something that works for my students. So I love manipulatives for sure. I love things that we can interact and do together instead of a worksheet. So that's kind of a broad thing. That's my go-to. And then there is the awesome thing called...
Worksheets suck.
Yes.
Jonathan's opinion, worksheets suck.
I mean, I loved worksheets as a student, so like, don't bring them up to me.
I mean, they suck as your primary tool of education.
Okay, you are right.
Your primary mode of teaching, if it's a worksheet, that is not great.
And a lot of times it's not developmentally appropriate for some of my kids to sit there and do a 30-minute worksheet, which... I would never give a 30-minute worksheet, but like, you know what I mean? To sit there and have to answer 1, number 2, number 3.
Right, that makes sense.
So.
Little Jimmy is 5 years old. So they answer 25 questions.
Yeah. No.
Okay, guys.
Sorry, I'm getting sassy.
It's okay. I love things like calming corners. I have set up a whole little cubby in my room, and I have like fun little lights, and I have a curtain with like little pieces. It looks like little... like jellyfish tentacles is what one of my students said. It's like, it's a jellyfish. I said, no, it's just, but yeah, sure. If you want it to be a jellyfish. And I have like a lot of fidgets in there that can help calm them because I have some students with some big emotions. And sometimes they just need to take a step back and go calm down because I'm not getting anything out of them if we're upset. Like sometimes we need to regulate. And so that's something we really work on in that calming corner.
Before we educate.
Ooh, I need that shirt. Can we make that a shirt?
We'll make some stickers. We'll put our coach read on there.
Surely
can make some money here.
Came up with that already. But
I love it.
I just thought of it.
It's fine.
So I have like posters and I have things to work on how we can regulate our systems and things like that. So I love that. I love my social emotional learning. Then sensory input, like big time. Like I have some friends that like to stand on tables. But it's because they're seeking that sensory of like, woo, I'm up here. Yeah. And so a lot of times I'll go and at the playground, I'll make sure they jump off everything that is safe. Like we get that input because we don't really want to jump off tables because it's not safe all the time. And then our friends follow and we don't want that all the time. Also, data collection. There's all kinds of fun ways to do it now. So they have apps like TallyFlex is one of my favorites. So you just pull up the app and collect your data real quick when you're working with a student. So you don't have to like write it down or walk all the way over to your computer and try to remember everything. And so anything like that can make my life easier.
That's cool.
Love it. Should look into it.
I'm saying all the therapists out here are like, okay.
And then there's like Google Docs. I have one of my teacher friends did this, so I can't take credit. She made a Google Doc of data collection, and you just scan the QR code when you're sitting there working with them, and you like collect data
That's
quickly as you're working.
Smart.
She came up with it. I was like, "You're
People are
genius."
I don't know what that. You said a lot of words that I don't understand what they mean because I'm technically.
I literally hang up QR codes all over the building. So you know what that is.
It's a square with little black squigglies. You get your phone.
Guess who's never scanned one of the ones around the office?
Well, it's not meant for you anyway, but it's
Typically, you can just get your phone out and it'll pop up a link and you
Yeah,
can
but,
click on it.
It's okay. We have to show our elderly mom to do it too.
Yeah.
Your elderly mom.
She's going to kill us if she does that.
I hope she does.
So nice.
I'm calling you out.
You're young.
Yeah, she's turning 50 this year. She's
Oh my
old.
gosh. That is a young mom.
Anyway,
Technology, assistive technology, anything like that, I love.
Yeah.
Um,
Gosh. We need to do an assistive tech episode.
wow.
no, I'm not really like a part of that because I'm not.
You're not invited, so sorry.
But like
come back.
that sounds so.
This
much
is like
fun.
when your little sister like wants to come with you everywhere.
Yes,
Oh my gosh, go away.
but I
know,
use
Jonathan was my
so
friend.
much assistive technology within my classroom.
I know people who are assistive tech specialists.
So
There's a
That's
word for it. That's ATPs.
Yeah.
Assistive technology
professionals.
professionals.
Wait, but ATP also means something else too,
It's,
doesn't it?
it's energy. It's singular energy.
Yes, it is.
I was like, isn't that another
Learn that in biology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bring it back, coming back to ninth grade biology over here.
The mitochondria.
The parents of the cell. We love a mitochondria.
Wow.
I'm so sorry. Any more
It's okay,
resources?
that's why I decided not to go to PT school because stuff like biology got hard, man.
I believe it. Yeah.
I believe that.
I think one more thing. My favorite is something called boom cards. I don't know if you've ever used those.
Yeah. During
I can
COVID.
put my fun little voice so my students get to hear my voice again. I can record myself when they press the buttons and they're like, where is she? Where is she at? When they press the buttons, she's like right there. And so it's just like a connection building thing too, because as much as I might be annoyed by my voice, sometimes we make connections and they hear it all day long. So to like hear me teach it and then see me teach it and then apply again when they're sitting there working can it's amazing. And I can make it into whatever I want. I can make IEP goals. We can work on it through that. So anything that makes my life easier, I'm for it.
That's cool.
And I try to stay away from like technology with my kids all day long, but there's some things that are just like can't live without.
Yeah. Well, they're growing up in a tech world.
They're growing up in
It's
tech world.
We
Yeah,
gotta understand that.
for sure.
That's true.
I mean, I had to teach this guy over here how to zoom in on it or unzoom his iPad today. So
That's okay. Guided access is my other best friend.
Guided access is my favorite thing.
Yes.
Guided access is where you click your little thing 3 times and then
your little thing.
your home button
Yeah.
and
Your lock
it
button.
locks it.
Well, if you have old iPad.
I don't know. You click the button 3 times and it locks your tablet into the app it's on.
And
I
they
know
can't
what that's
leave.
all about. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Like
great.
if we're having to do work on our curriculum, which is Teach Town, they always want to go to something fun like Starfall or try to get on PBS Kids. And so, sorry, we got to do our work today, friend.
And my kids, they sometimes they just don't have the motor control to hit the screen the whole time.
Mhm.
So sometimes they're dragging from the sides and I'm like, dang it, we just closed the app.
Or when we're like working on AAC and then they just straight to YouTube.
Yeah.
Every time. Every kid knows where the YouTube icon is.
Yeah.
YouTube is, I can't blame them. I love YouTube. I don't have TV, but I pay for YouTube Premium.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't get ads. And
Funny story. I had a student ask me today,
Music.
where's the YouTube? Can we watch YouTube? I said, oh, YouTube's broken.
the whole thing.
The whole thing.
That's
With your kids.
Because it was right there and I kept pressing it and I wasn't like actually pressing it. I was like, oh no. Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do to survive sometimes.
It's okay. I
Because
just
if
my
we would've
2-year-old
got 'em-
things are asleep all the time.
If we would have got on that YouTube track, we would have never came back.
Yeah.
We would have been gone.
Yeah.
It's
So-
okay. It
I'm
happens.
tracking my personal life, but I try not to do it a whole lot with the kids too.
Well, this was a fun chat.
It's a fun chat.
We probably should wrap it up now.
We can listen. You can come back anytime.
Thanks, I
You
appreciate
can come
it.
back. We'll talk about something else. I don't know what.
Hope I
Other
explained
things.
everything well.
I think so.
Yeah. So we always do a therapy win of the week.
Woo.
Do you have a teacher win of the week?
Yes, I have such a big teacher win of the week.
Gosh, I got so excited.
I did because I had a lot of students last year who were not potty trained yet.
Uh-huh.
But I really worked with my parents about how important it was to do it at home because that's where a lot of it starts. Is if I'm doing it at school and they're not doing it at home, we're not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
And I had 3 of my former students come back and their parents were like, they're fully potty trained. And
Great.
oh my goodness, that burden was lifted off of my shoulders.
That is so exciting.
It made my day run smoothly, and it was just such a win. And I was very proud of my parents. I was very proud of my students.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's my
awesome.
win.
That's a huge win.
That's a big win.
Yeah.
And I just want to plug how important toileting as an occupation is because for parents it's huge, and for teachers obviously it's huge. Even Mom mentioned like working on potty training before you go to pre-K is an important skill, because one thing that people may not know is that toileting, people who have like toileting challenges, it is often a major barrier to their access to the social world because it makes going out in public so much harder.
Yes.
And it makes the lives of caregivers so much easier when people are able to toilet on their own. For instance, this is not exactly the same thing, but like we were talking a lot this past summer in my OT program about spinal cord injury patients and how people after spinal cord injuries often have like bowel incontinence, bowel and bladder incontinence because they can't feel it. They lose the sensation and they lose the control over those muscles and things. And that's for a lot of people, it is their primary barrier to like being involved in their community because they can't control their bowels.
A lot of time that can be a point that is given when we have a student is if they can't use the restroom on their own, like they may be able to do a lot of things and be a part of that gen ed curriculum, but gen ed teachers are not equipped a lot of times to meet that need.
Yeah.
And so a student that might not need to be in my classroom who needs more access to the gen ed curriculum, they might be suggested to come in a different room, and it all based off of their toileting needs. So it's so important. Even if your student does have a disability or special needs, and it can be hard. I know it's so hard.
Yeah.
It can be difficult.
It's something people don't think about a lot, but toileting using that potty is it's really pivotal to like someone's experience as a
We have a potty button in my room. So it has a little visual of a toilet on it and on the wall beside the door. So if you need to potty, you just go and press it and say potty, and we go.
I love
It's like a doorbell,
That's
almost.
cool.
That's smart.
Yeah.
I'm a fan.
That's smart.
Sometimes I regret the button, but if you press it, you're going to the bathroom. So
I love it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Meg,
Well,
why did
simple
you
switch
have
there.
A therapy win of the week.
Sure, rolling off that simple switch. I was able to attach 2 simple switches to somebody's standard today with a lot of
That's cool.
packing tape.
can you
Because
explain what a standard is to
a
us?
standard,
Oh, you said
stander.
A standard.
Sorry.
Standard. I don't know how to explain it. You explain.
A standard is a piece of equipment that is designed to support a person, in this case a child. It is a mechanical system that like goes around their body. It supports them under their what's the professional word for groin?
Groin, I think it's fine.
It like supports them under
They're
their pelvic region.
yeah.
Supports them there, and then like it supports their ability to come to a stand when they may not have the strength.
So
or
it's like one of those
endurance
where
to do
you
that
lay
themselves.
down, you strap, and you stand.
Your friend was not on a standard.
Mine was like, it wasn't a standard?
It's not. That's not.
I call it a standard. I totally call it the wrong thing today.
Oh gosh, I can't think of the word. that
Just
it
kidding,
is.
man. It looks like a walker. It does, but it's on wheels.
There's a word for it, and it's escaping me right now.
But there's like a little harness in it for the kiddo to hang out in.
He's mobile.
Yeah.
He's
So,
mobile. He
like
walks around it.
Like a walker is
Yeah.
what I would picture you might.
I guess a walker.
There's a word for
Yeah.
it. It's not-
The standard is, I know what you're talking about, the standard now.
I'm not an assistant tech.
I'm sorry, I didn't
either.
mean to get on this. I
it's
wanted you to explain.
Okay, but anyway, picture my little friend. He's very small, and he's in a walker type scenario, but like a good walker, not like not like the kind that you would buy from. Not like a toy.
Not for an older person either.
No, and not for an older person.
It's supporting his weight.
Yes,
a medical supply type thing. Anyway, it has 2 handlebars on the front, which Jonathan actually helped correct in the hallway during my speech session, to where they're kind of like out in front of his hands when you say so. And so once you moved those, I was like already going to work on simple switches that day. And I was like, he is so mobile today. Like I had him first, so he was like ready to run. So I was like, let's do stop and go. Like I love a good stop and go session.
She loves to stop and go.
I really do. And we just happen to have the perfect green and red switches for it. So
perfect.
Of course I go over there and record stop and go really quick and grab some tape and just tape it on those 2 handlebars. And the first few times did not have a lot of intention behind it, but we modeled stop and go a whole lot. And then by the end he was like, go. Go. And the funniest one was he hit go and then just ran away from it. And it was
understood his assignment.
He literally did. He has the best smile. Like
he has
like this mischievous smile.
He is the sweetest little.
He's hilarious, and he has come such a long way. Like he was very like medically fragile when he was younger, and now he's doing so much better.
I have a funny story involving this little friend and our adult friend. We've got to reach out to one of our speechy friends to get her on this podcast too. Because I have a funny story about that kid and her. But we'll save that for another time.
Yeah.
My therapy win of the week is, since we're on talking about school, the day that we are recording this was many of my kids' first day back to school. And has nothing to do with therapy, I guess, but I had multiple parents come in, especially my kiddos in the afternoon, who were talking about their students, their kids going to school for the first time, because it was many of their first times going to school ever, and they were so excited about how their kids just had the best days, and they were so happy that their kids went to school. And one of the moms, it was so funny, but broke my heart because her heart was broken. She was like, he started pre-K and then he just was like, bye mom, and went off and just ran out and was totally fine. So I had to run back to my car before I started crying. And I was like, oh, poor mom, but I'm so glad he had a good time.
Like what a great transition. But
it's like he did so great in that moment, but I know that's hard.
See, transitions are hard for adults too.
Ain't that the truth? But really has nothing to do with therapy. I was just really
that was a good win.
All my kids who started school.
Well, you put in a lot of work with those kiddos.
And I'm sure you prepared them for school.
We did a lot of work to help them be as independent as they can be.
Right. Yeah.
So I love them. So if you guys want to hear more about other things that we talk about.
This ending is never good. We need a good ending.
I know. We got to figure out something. You can follow us on Instagram at
the.co-treat.
The.co-treat.
Yeah.
No hyphen. I don't know if Instagram lets me do that. I think it's illegal. I don't know. The.co-treat. Follow us. Give us a message. An I don't know what I'm saying.
A DM.
A DM.
We got the young girl here to say
I got
DM.
you.
Yeah.
Direct message for the olders.
For the olders. Do you want to shout out anything or what?
Shout out to all those special ed teachers out there doing the work. Woo.
So let us know, what are your therapy wins? What are your teacher wins? Do you have experience with a SpED teacher? Do you love them? Do you hate them? We want to hear. Listen, you said they're all great.
If you are one of my parents listening, please don't say you hate me.
I just love it. You're like, at them below.
I'm sorry. This is what happens when I get too candid.
Just, at them and give them.
At Miss Ryder is the worst teacher I've ever seen.
I mean, hey, we respect all opinions up in this place.
I love it. The kid's just over there talking.
So let us know. Just reach out. Let us know. What do you guys want to hear about next? What would you guys like for us to talk to EG about on a future episode?
Yeah.
If I'm welcome back.
If she'll...
Well, if we get any nasty comments, you're not coming back.
Okay. We'll see what happens. Okay. Well, peace out.
Bye.
See you guys later.
See you next time.